Hi, good day, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar today. My name is Johanna. I'm from the UN Innovation Network. For those of you who are relatively new to the network, I just wanted to briefly introduce us. We're an informal community of innovators from all across the UN. We currently have about 3,000 members from 70 UN entities, plus or minus 140 countries signed up. And one of our regular offerings to our members is to host these kinds of webinars where we try to introduce you to new innovative projects that different UN entities are piloting, are scaling, and to encourage exchange and collaboration for these. And in our webinar today, we are very happy to introduce you to EMPACT. That's WFP's initiative, which aims to connect young people and vulnerable populations to the future of work. And I think that's a very relevant topic because we have never seen more people forcibly displaced than we're seeing right now. I think UNHCR says it's about 80 million people have fled their homes, and a lot of these people are children and young people. And the vast majority of these are hosted by developing countries who have their own development priorities and their own challenges and their own needs to support their populations. And at times they can't always invest a lot in supporting large refugee populations. So with little opportunities to draw on, experience sadly tells us that a lot of these young people, or a lot of these people in general, will rely on international aid to cover their basic humanitarian needs. And of course, food is one of the most basic, if not the most basic human need. So to offer young refugees and vulnerable population a way out of this seemingly, let's call it, hopeless situation, WFP has launched and scaled an initiative that aims to connect, as I said, young people to digital opportunities and thereby allow them to earn livelihoods and create alternative pathways for them. If I'm not mistaken, it's one of the first projects that WFP's Innovation Accelerator conceptualized, and I'm really curious to hear how it's been going. Before I introduce you to our presenter for the day, just a quick note that as usual, we're going to hear a short presentation and then we're going to Q&A. We use the Q&A platform on Zoom. You can see it at the bottom of your screen. Please put any questions there. We try not to use the chat, it gets confusing. And also if you put your questions in there, you can vote on questions that other people have asked and help us prioritize. We'll try and give you the floor with your question to make it a little bit more interactive and not just hear me and Elisa talking. And as always, this webinar is being recorded. On the next slide, you can see a screenshot of our webinar library and the link. So the webinar will be available there shortly afterwards in case you want to revisit it. The slides will be there. Feel free to take a look and share it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter, Elisa Molina. Thank you for joining us. Elisa is the global lead for EMPACT, the project that I just mentioned. She is based with WFP in Rome. And prior to taking on this global role for EMPACT, she was a lead with WFP's Innovation Accelerator and has worked as a freelance consultant specializing on funding and business development. So thank you for joining us today, Elisa. Really good to have you. Handing over to you, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Johanna, and hello, everyone. So the introduction was actually very, very thorough. Today I'm here to talk about this activity that WFP has been implementing since 2016. I'm currently leading it. So yes, I'm gonna kick off. So as Johanna already mentioned, UN assessments have highlighted that the two primary drivers of displacement for most refugees are lack of safety and the loss of livelihood opportunities at home, which clearly negatively impact people's ability to afford food, and food being an essential source of stability. This is a very worrying trend. When families are able to put food on the table, the need to move and leave home often diminishes. Even more nowadays, when more than 80% of refugees are hosted in countries where that they have already socioeconomic challenges and unemployment, the chances for these people to become financially self-reliant is very slim. And this clearly leads to continuous and unstable dependency on international aid. On the flip side of the story, though, there is almost a bottomless pool of freelancing opportunities out there. The world trends keep on moving in the direction of online and remote works across many industries. For example, the gig economy, meaning platforms that offer freelancers opportunities to connect with the clients, short-term jobs, contracted work, have been growing incredibly. And I mean, COVID-19 has shown us that many jobs that we thought would have never been able to be performed online or remotely are now performed online and remotely. Many of our organizations and agencies we work for are now working completely remotely with people collaborating from all different parts of the world. So what we understood with EMPACT and kind of the idea we had from the beginning was to bridge these two worlds, right? So facilitating and bridging the skills and opportunity gap between vulnerable population and the digital economy. And what do I mean by this? So digital economy, the internet in general, there are always like lower let's say, challenges in accessing the internet and accessing even hardware nowadays, either mobile, hardware, or laptops. But there needs to be some kind of skills. People accessing the digital economy need to have some kind of skills in order to make the best out of it. At the same time, vulnerable population are in need of income generating activities, are in need of upskilling activities. So we thought, why not bringing these two things together with EMPACT? And indeed, the model of EMPACT is a learn and earn model. So the first aspect of EMPACT is the learning aspect, in which we support refugees, but also IDPs, host communities, so vulnerable population at large, in acquiring IT, English and soft skills, meaning that we want to make sure that they can have all the tools in their hands to make the best out of the opportunities offered by the digital economy. Throughout the training, we also offer coaching and mentoring. We show the people, our participants, what kind of opportunities they can really find out there. And we try to guide them in picking trainings, and people picking potential jobs that might match their needs. And then finally, we also create a community around our participants, kind of a safety net. We all know how important our social is, the social capital, right? Is the social network in order to find a job, in order to find opportunities. So we also try to create that with our participants and alumni. After the learning is done, after our participants are upskilled, so to say, we introduce the earning aspect of the project. So we connect our participants to online and offline internships and income generating activities, jobs. I underline that we also do connect them to, with offline opportunities, because we have seen throughout the years that in some economies, the issues that unemployment and some of the issues were that companies would not find the right skills in the country. So the academia schools were not really providing the training they needed and the skills that the companies needed. So thanks to EMPACT, many times the companies locally would then find this kind of expertise that they were looking for in their workforce. So we do clearly connect our participants with any opportunities, income generating opportunities they can find both online and offline. But then clearly the power of the program and its mission is to make sure that our participants are also onboarded into online marketplaces or have access to remote and online jobs. I want to give you just a snapshot of how we do that. And then moving forward, I'm going to talk about some of the key aspects of the program and some experiences we have had in the past, both negative and positive, because today I feel that we are kind of in a safe space, and I would really love to hear your ideas and opinions on how to both scale the program and make it better. So ideally, the EMPACT works in this way. So we we do targeting, right? So we find a number, usually a pilot starts with 100 people that do an entry exam, and then they are divided into cohorts. One cohort does digital literacy, so they are really beginners. They do also English and soft skills. And the second cohort is more advanced, let's say, so they do train on more specialized skills. The first cohort then ends up after 4 to 6 months with skills. And with these skills, they can either find internships or very simple micro work tasks online. The second cohort, though, ends up with more advanced skills that would allow them already to find the job and to find opportunities online and offline. And throughout EMPACT, clearly we try to create a community between the participants and alumni in order for them to feel safe and to find like-minded people to collaborate with. So just to give you an idea of the size of the project, so far we have trained almost 10,000 people, 52% of which are women. We always try and we purposely target women because we want to always strike at least a 50-50 balance, although it is very complicated especially in some countries, but we've always managed. We've been working in Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, Kenya. We are expanding currently to new countries, and we've been working for 4 years. Actually, this is 4 years and a half, yes. We've been collaborating with a variety of organizations, both in the private and public sector. A donor of ours has been Google, the BMF, Fiverr as a private partner. So throughout the years, we have really collaborated with a lot of organizations. And as you can understand, WFP mandate is not to train people, right? So clearly EMPACT is kind of a framework, is an umbrella initiative of WFP that connects a variety of actors and stakeholders globally to partners and technical experts locally, right? So my role is, to connect all these partners that you see below with global partners in order to train and connect to work vulnerable populations scattered around the world. Now, I want to talk about some of the key ingredients of EMPACT, and also these are the ingredients that you need to have in order to be able to scale. So first of all is the targeting. Targeting needs to be done very purposely, because first of all, you need to have a certain kind of participants participating in order to make sure that the training is successful and the connection to work is successful. We need to find the right participants, and the right participants do depend on the priority of the country, on the kind of training that we are planning in the specific country. But most of the time they need to be banked, because if you connect someone to online job opportunities, income generating opportunities, they need to be able to withdraw the money, right? So they need to be able to have a bank account. So that's a very, very important aspect. Second, very important as well is this match, this 50-50 between the female and male ratio. We really want to make sure that we create an environment that is welcoming and that is suitable also for women with children to participate in the training. And in general, clearly we target food insecure populations. So we want to target people that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to access this kind of training. Second, very important is labor market analysis. So everything we do and we design needs to be informed by data. So most of the time we do labor market analysis ourselves together with the implementing partners. Sometimes we collaborate with governments and they have labor market analysis already performed. And we do both local labor market and global labor market analysis. So to make sure that we really mapped all the opportunities out there, we map the skill gaps, and then we map the kind of sectors in which our participants are more likely to find jobs. Third point is partnership. So as soon as the labor market is done, we try to partner with corporations, with employment organizations, with government. We try to have everyone that is a stakeholder in this conversation involved, because as you can understand, even countries in Europe or even like countries in other continents of the world, they even have struggles in including people and decreasing their unemployment rates. So you can only imagine in countries where we work in in Iraq, in Lebanon, how much more difficult it is to actually bring bring new people into the economy. So if we don't work with the government, if we don't work with unemployment services, this struggle becomes even bigger. So partnership is really, really important. And then finally, certifications. So many participants we work with are on the move. So either they're refugees or they're internally displaced people, meaning that at some point in time, they're gonna go somewhere else. So we need to make sure that our intervention is a long-term intervention. So the skills they acquire, they are certified, and the certification is recognized beyond the borders of the country where they're in at the moment. And this is not always straightforward, because clearly the implementing partners you collaborate with, or we collaborate with, not always manage to certify their training with international certified standards. But this is definitely something we try to figure out when we design the program. So I want to paint a very straightforward and very sincere picture, right? So those were the key ingredients of the program. Most of the times, those are also the most challenging things to figure out, because first of all, digital vocational training is not yet really codified internationally. So in the past years, and because of COVID as well, many corporations have been developing online digital trainings. For example, Microsoft, Google, but they're very recent, right? And also, let's say, in implementing partners locally, those kind of training didn't trickle down yet to local and smaller and rural organizations. So it's very difficult to find a very solid, internationally recognized digital vocational training that also includes soft skills. So this is the first issue. The second issue is clearly work. So sourcing work and projects for our participants is incredibly difficult. There are a variety of impact sourcing coalitions. There are a variety of companies that say that they're interested in including vulnerable population into their workforce. They create CSR programs about it, but the reality is that the numbers are very little. Those spots are very few, and there are many more people looking for work than actually jobs out there. So to match, when we design the program, to match each participant with a potential internship and job is very, very difficult. Connectivity is a challenge. I said before, hardware infrastructure is not maybe the first challenge we have, but it is still a challenge. So we are in many of the places where we are, internet is spotty. And clearly, if you have to do a digital training, you need to have very solid internet. Hardware is not as difficult to come across as it was maybe 5 years ago, but still, it's not so straightforward. And then finally, a lot of the population we target are either unbanked or underbanked. So we are still too small, like the project is still too small to become like an influential voice with financial organizations, but we are very hopeful, because we have seen in the past year a lot of different players and agencies in the UN really thinking seriously on how to include unbanked populations. So we're very hopeful this is going to be figured out, but until it's not, it's a challenge for scale. So to wrap up, I want to show you a best practice and a worst practice of the project. So I want to show you when the model is implemented in the way we have somehow designed it globally, and when we find the right partners, I want to show you the kind of impact we can achieve. And at the same time, I want to show you the kind of impact we cannot achieve if some of those key ingredients are not included into the recipe of the project. So the best practice, I'm not going to mention the country, but the best practice is very recent. So a country office decided to implement EMPACT in September 2020. So they were thinking about EMPACT way before, but then eventually it happened that they managed to put everything together in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. That didn't stop them. So they found a very competent implementing partner that was able to provide training online. And that training was developed together with a group of corporate partners of the project. So while the country office was looking for training providers, they were also looking for corporate partners. So they then put them together, and they sat together in a couple of weeks. They put together a training that was broad enough to provide general digital skills that clearly are useful, but then also specific enough then for the people after the training to be able to join the companies that were included in the partnership. After the training, a career fair and matchmaking event was organized. So all the corporate partners went online and saw the projects of the participants. So it was a 3 hours event. Participants were organizing groups, and they presented a series of projects. And then at the end of it, the implementing partners, WFP, and the corporate partners, they got together and they kind of matched each participant with the internship or job opportunity that the companies made available. And lastly, something very interesting that, to be honest, I didn't think before was possible, was to collaborate with other UN agencies to raise some funds for employment incentive schemes, meaning that the companies that then were able to hire for internships or jobs, they would get the first month of salary covered by those funds. So clearly it was an incredible incentive for the companies to hire our participants. The results of it were like 99% of attendance rate. 99 is true, like we had 100 participants and only one person dropped off. And then after the graduation, that was, I think, on the 26th of February, we have already 50% of the participants finding a job without our corporate partners. So they found a job in the digital economy. 30% of participants have been already matched with the corporate jobs that I mentioned. And then the other 20 are waiting for the matching to happen. It's going to be done until the end of this month. So 3 months after the end of the training, February, March, April, 2 months after the end of the training, 100% of our participants are either doing an internship or they found a job, either with our help or without our help. So this is amazing. I mean, you can understand the power of this program, if implemented this way, is incredible. Now, let's see an example of an implementation that didn't go as well. So another country office some years ago, so really the pilot was still in its infancy, we had identified training partners. So there was, let's say, a limited pool of implementing partners in that specific location, but then the one we picked wasn't really very good in digital work, digital freelancing, and online work at large. So it was this kind of typical vocational training institute that really didn't have any coach, any mentor, any teacher that really knew what online work was. So clearly the training was very academic, very theoretical. Students at the end of it, after 4 months, they still didn't know what online work was. Second of all, let's say the team underestimated the importance of including corporate partners from the very beginning. They thought that, okay, we have 4 months of the training. By the end of these 4 months, we might have found someone that wants to hire the participants. That was not the case. So at the end of it, we really didn't have any corporate partners that could onboard our participants. And then the most upsetting part was imprecise targeting. We then eventually figured out a couple of months into the program that many people were unbanked. So even when onboarding in marketplaces, they couldn't really withdraw the money they were earning. So it was very complicated to really get something good out of this pilot. So attendance rate was relatively low. I mean, 70% is still very good, but it's not what we want to work with. And then 10 to 30% employment rate, again, is not bad. I mean, even one person finding a job is an incredible achievement, but you can see in the best practice, the power of this program is much greater than that. So I want to conclude with a couple of next steps. So first of all, I think that Spanish-speaking countries are, the next goal for the project. The economy, online work and remote work is huge. I mean, the first market is English language jobs, but the second is Spanish language jobs. So we want to expand there. We want to scale up current pilots is the easiest way to scale at the end of the day because the team is already in place and experienced. So we want to scale at least by 20% each pilots we have. We want to create a stable pipeline of impact sourcing partners. Partnering in WFP is not very easy because clearly it's a lot of bureaucracy behind it, but is the most important item for the impact of EMPACT actually to happen. And then finally, we want to increase the amount of partnership we have with private and public partners in general, because we do believe that a lot of other organizations, probably some people already online, have been working in this field. And at the end of the day, if we don't pull resources together, the power and the impact we can reach, it's still gonna be relatively little. So I've seen a lot of organizations, for example, the ILO, UNHCR implementing similar programs. So ideally, we would, create kind of a coalition of similar initiatives, which would amplify the kind of impact we can have. Yes, thank you. I spoke a lot. I hope there are a lot of questions as well. Over to you, Joanna.
Thank you, Elisa. You spoke a lot, but I think you drew us all into the van. What a wonderful presentation. What a wonderful project. Thank you so much for sharing it. Thank you for sharing what worked and what didn't. It's so important to keep on talking about this. So it's hugely appreciated. I'll give you a 2-second break because I'd originally wanted to launch a poll just to see where people are joining from, what background they have. I'll do that now. Let's see, there should be a poll popping up. How many of you are working on the following issues? You can choose as many as you wish. Refugees, digital skills building, entrepreneurship. Apologies if the list is not conclusive, but let's get a sense of who's joining us today. And then Elisa, be warned, there are lots of questions coming for you. All right, leaving this open for another 5 seconds. Take your pick and preloading, 30 seconds gone. Here we go, sharing the results with you. So as you can see, a lot of colleagues work in digital skills building, also quite a few in refugees and entrepreneurship. So really a very balanced audience and very relevant to the presentation that you've shared. So closing that, and I would like to start the Q&A by passing it over to Tafik, who is with the Resident Coordinator's Office in, I believe, Syria. He's already expressed that he's a fan of your work. Tafik, you should be able to speak now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elsa, for the presentation. It was very exciting and sparked millions of ideas, especially in Syria. We have a lot of refugees, we have a lot of youth disconnected from the labor market. And my question is with 2 points. And you already mentioned that your program EMPACT working with ILO, maybe with UNDP and other joint UN entities. Can you elaborate more on this? It's like a joint plan, joint programming, or just benefiting from the fund, as you mentioned? The second point is, there is any required headline for this training that delivered to the participant? And thank you very much. Thank you, over.
Johanna, shall I just answer and then,
yes.
or are we gathering? Okay, perfect.
Sounds good. If that's okay with you, let's take one at a time. Great.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Tafik, very much. Yes, so the first question, we don't have yet official formalized partnerships with any of the agencies I mentioned. I clearly collaborate a lot with ILO in an informal way. They invite me to their events. I invite them to my events. I know of very similar programs run by Mercy Corps, run by UNHCR in different areas. But yes, I haven't been formalizing collaborations. But I mean, this kind of fora, in my opinion, are aimed also at that. So if you know anyone that would be interested in pulling resources together to scale this kind of programs, I'm more than happy to pick it up offline with you. And then the deadline. So I didn't understand very well. So the deadline in general, let's say the trainings last from 4 to 6 months. It does depend on the cohort we have. If we have very beginners, we have more advanced people. It might last longer and shorter. It also depends on the implementing partner. Many implementing partners use different methodologies, right, and modalities for the trainings. So the training lasts have different lengths depending on the countries. But I don't know whether that was your question. Over.
Tafik, do you want to clarify? Has your question been answered?
Sorry, I don't want to take more time. My question is about headline. There is any standard curriculum or something related to this training? Thank you.
Okay, very good question. So as I said, WFP is not a training provider, right? So we don't have a unique curriculum that we implement everywhere. Every curriculum is developed by implementing partners locally that understand the context and also know the kind of employers that we can collaborate with. So we kind of customize it for each pilot, even within countries. But at the same time, there are some basics that we want pilots to include, which is soft skills, English, and digital literacy, the Microsoft Digital Literacy certificate. Those are the basics. Then the rest depends on the employers that we collaborate with. Over.
Thank you very much, Elisa, and thank you, Tafik, for the questions. Fingers crossed that EMPACT one day will come to Syria. It seems like there's certainly interest. I would like to, because you talked about scaling, I'm going to go to Adriana, who had a question about scaling. Adriana, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask the question. Demonstration effect. So Elisa, you'll get the question from me. Adriana is wondering, to which countries do you plan to expand?
Very good question. So from a WFP perspective, we usually answer the needs from bottom up, right? So if any country sees that this is a potential program for them, for their target group, then they reach out to me. But to be honest, oftentimes I reach out to countries where I think that there is the most potential. And as I mentioned before, Spanish-speaking countries, so Central and South America, in my opinion, are the place where this program would thrive because of both the target group. You have a lot of returnees that speak English very well. And also in many countries, you have people that have a pretty good education level. So you don't have to bridge too much or like, let's say, to train for too long the participant. And also between, Colombia and Venezuela, there you have an opportunity to support the refugee response there, because there are a lot of people that come from, they're very competent, they maybe come with already a pretty advanced expertise, but just don't have the opportunities to work or don't find, jobs and income generating activities. So in Central and South America, you have a lot of ingredients that would be great to actually make the best of. But in general, the way I expand is by first doing a need assessment. So when countries come to me, clearly I don't have expertise in every country and region of the world. So first we do a need assessment and we try to understand whether a program like this, let's say, can work. And then we check the 4 key ingredients and see whether we can go with them, and then we expand there. So yeah, there may be maybe many more. For example, Syria.
Sounds good. Thank you, Elisa. Very good to hear that this is fact-based. We're staying on these themes of understanding local context. And I think I'm going to give you a little bit of a harder question from Manuel from UNICEF. Manuel is based in New York. And Manuel, you should be able to speak now.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Hannah, and thanks, Elisa. My question is a little bit more on the analysis and the data you were talking about, mapping the skill gaps and mapping the local job market possibilities and framing that within the global one, and wondering what data and techniques and analysis you use to do that, and whether that can be systematized or analyzed in a global framework.
Clearly the tough question at some point. So we, depending on the country and depending on the collaboration we have with the government, we do two kinds of assessment. One is the global labor market assessment, and we use a variety of tools that are available globally to assess the status of global labor market and the trends. There are World Bank yearly reviews on the future of work, which we use very much, trying to understand the skills and the fields in which there has been the most growth of vacancies. So when it comes to the global economy, we kind of have it very well figured out, because there is so much out there. Then when it comes to the local economies, it's much more difficult. So as I said, we use implementing partners. So we try to always find partners that have expertise in job creation, income generation programs, and then we work together with the government as well on that, together with the Ministry of Labor, with the IT Ministry as well many times. So we try to get as many reports and analysis done as possible from both NGOs and the government, and we try to kind of make the best out of the two. Sometimes data, yes, it's not very easy to really evaluate whether the data is reliable or not. And to be honest, I don't think I have, the context expertise for like in any country, but usually you see some patterns. So for example, like in Kenya, we had seen that there was a lot of potential in the tourism sector in 2019, and that that kind of is kind of self-explanatory. So you find, the evidence you find is kind of very straightforward, and but yes, from a data collection perspective, we kind of rely on partners locally and the government. And then I wanted to add, something else. We have gathered some resources for labor market analysis. That a lot, like different organizations put together, the ILO, I think Mercy Corps was another one. I can share the list with all of you. And we also use those tools to do labor market assessments locally. Over.
Thanks a lot, Elisa. I would love to keep connected on that space and see some of those tools.
Thank you, Manuel. We're happy to make that connection, and we'll be including Elisa's contact details in a follow-up email to the webinar. Lots of you are already asking me. Don't you worry, the email address will be coming. Elisa, I am going to give the floor to our colleague Maria Jose, who's with the ILO, I believe, in Peru, and she will have a question. I'd like to piggyback one off that ahead of that. And in addition to her question, colleagues were wondering how many participants remain in employment 6 months or a year after that. And I'm now giving the floor to Maria Jose. Maria Jose, welcome to the webinar. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's a very, very interesting program. I work in Latin America and the Caribbean in the regional office. So first of all, I would like to be in contact with you and to put you in contact with my colleagues working on refugee and migrant workers. Now, I'm very interested in knowing if you have any information about working conditions of those hired by corporations, and also if you support the creation and formalization of enterprises for those who choose this path.
So thank you for the question. Yes, let's keep in contact for sure. So when it comes to work conditions, at the beginning, when I started this project, it kind of, I didn't think about it, but then I became passionate about it. So I contacted the ILO. And so what we do now is with every corporate partner we collaborate with, we share with them their guidelines from the ILO based on the decent work agenda. So it's kind of, it's a 2-pager which kind of highlights the values we stand behind. So fair payment, like minimum wage, social how do you call them?
Protection.
Exactly, social all of that. Clearly, that's very easy for us to do when we have identified corporate partners, because then they sign it and and it's done. At the same time, though, when it comes to online work on marketplaces, right, like Fiverr, Upwork, micro work platforms, it's almost impossible for us to really track what happens. So what we do is, before we onboard our participants, we contact the marketplaces, and most of the time what we have been trying to do is to create to convince and oblige the marketplaces to dedicate work to our participants that match the minimum wage of the country, and a lot of other different principles that we stand behind. And we've been using, in that case, the Fair Work framework. So Fair Work is a project that has been financed by the European Union, and also it works if I'm not mistaken, in Ecuador, not in Peru, but it analyzes marketplaces in different countries of the world and scores, best and worst marketplaces depending on the conditions offered to the workers. So we collaborate with them to try to make sure that we don't expose our participants to, low wages or inappropriate contents. That's a huge issue, inappropriate contents on micro work platforms. So at the moment, I mean, again, I work for WFP. It's not really my expertise or the expertise of the organization I work for. So the thing I'm trying to do is to really convince ILO to come with me so that we have a bit more leverage in when I discuss with marketplaces, so that they can really, and they are obliged to comply with some basics rights for the workers we bring into their platforms. So it's not an answer, but it's kind of an open pledge to keep on, to keep on collaborating on this. Over.
Thank you very much. Very well done.
An invitation, Lisa, that might even be more powerful than an answer. So thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Maria Jose, for the question. I'm going to look at a few posted by anonymous attendees. And someone here is wondering, can you speak a little bit about the 52% female participation rate that practices are put in place to allow this, and how did that start? So well done for getting so many women involved. What's the experiences there? How did you make it happen?
So in some pilots, we even have 56% of women participants. So, I mean, it does depend on from country to country. So what we have tried to do was to either be flexible with the schedule of the training. So really, when women wanted to sign up, we were trying to really build training schedule around their needs. In some instances in Iraq, it was the time before I joined the program, but I remember that implementing partners have had additional rooms with childcare provided, so that women could join. If they had kids, they could drop the kids in the kind of kindergarten of the implementing partner. And then in some other cases, so something interesting again that I didn't know. I'm Italian, so I clearly I come from Europe, so many regions of the world and many practices of the world where were not known to me before I joined the program. When we moved the whole program to online modality during COVID, and shout out to the team locally that in a matter of weeks pivoted the whole program to online modality, we figured out that some female participants, Muslim female participants, were not comfortable or couldn't turn on their cameras, because they were uncomfortable about it. And that was mainly for females. So you can understand, like, our implementing partners, since they were locals, it was not a real big problem for them, but many times when it comes also to soft skills training and so on, video was needed. So what they did, if I'm not mistaken, was to create, like, to do one-on-ones, coaches and one female at a time, and the coach was usually a female as well, so that the participants could still do the training and get the best out of it, but adapted to their needs and their beliefs. So we try to be as flexible as possible. Again, EMPACT is kind of an umbrella, but we try to customize it as much as possible to welcome people with disabilities as well, women, or people with special needs in general. Over.
Thank you very much, Elena. Elisa, sorry, and a nice bridge to a question that Marco from ICAO in Canada had. Marco, the floor is yours.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
No,
didn't find
okay.
that button. I actually posted two questions. I don't know which one did you refer to.
Take both. I saw both.
The which one you say?
I saw both questions. Feel free to ask both of them, but I was referring to the connectivity one, I guess.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so in ICAO also we are trying multiple things, to reach out to communities and to training. And for example, so I had a question on delivering offline courses, because we have a lot of online material, and our communities often the internet is not good enough for taking online learning. So we are actually experimenting with a little mini computer where we would install a Moodle, which is a learning management system, on it, and then basically ship it to the country. So we are experimenting currently with something like that, to even go further in that. So I was wondering if you had if you were thinking of doing something like that, like an offline version. And another way for which we also were thinking in the same line, I mean, ICAO, we want to reach out to these people, is that we have sometimes like training institutes in countries. So we were thinking of asking the people to go to a training institute, which, well, needs then partnerships with those training institutes, but it would like maybe bridge the problem of the connectivity, so that we know they are somewhere, so I was wondering if you are thinking of these two yet, bringing people to a place and providing them with offline material. Thank you.
Great question. So EMPACT started as an offline, so to say, like in presence training, but that because of COVID, we had to close the centers. So even schools are now closed in many of the countries where we operate. So what happened was that when possible, so when we had hardware for our participants, we were loaning the computers together with internet bundles, so that if they didn't have a computer and internet at home, we would cover the cost for that during the training. In Kenya, for example, that was in Iraq, yes, and in Turkey as well. Then in Kenya, measures like there weren't very strict measures at least until now, and we work in Kibera, which is a huge informal settlement. So there also it's a bit more difficult to implement very strict measures, as you can understand. So we collaborate already with local organizations. So they managed, they managed to create big spaces that are, to keep distancing, between participants, and then participants were going there. But then what happened is that the spaces we had available were from libraries, or they were public spaces. And now, because the lockdown is becoming a bit more severe, those spaces are closed. But many informal businesses like, cafes, internet cafes, and so on, they're still open. So our participants are going there, and the implementing partners is doing like small agreements with these internet cafes to give access for free to our participants. Now, I don't know how much I should push for this, because clearly it's not really the ideal scenario, but I completely see the point of having offline training available. Is just that, the program wants to connect people to the digital economy. And if there is no internet, maybe the training, you can still do it, but then what about finding online or remote work? So there is still something that needs to be figured out in the medium to long term. So I think that, yes, you can partner with local, organization and vocational training centers, but then if COVID is gonna stick around, we still need to provide, we still need to make sure that participants have access to the internet and at least hardware. So yes, it's not super straightforward.
Thank you, Elisa. That makes perfect sense. It's very useful to provide training and very nice to provide it indeed on lone computers and in an offline manner. But if you're wanting to have people work in digital opportunities afterwards, that makes it a little bit challenging. It seems to be the day of Maria Jose. So I'm going to another Maria Jose, this time in Bolivia, working with UNICEF. Maria Jose, floor is yours.
Hello, yes, I'm the second Maria Jose. Thank you, Elisa, for your presentation. It was really wonderful and very interesting. What I would like to ask is concerning experiences that you might have concerning STEM areas with a gender focus. STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for girls, because we have the experience here in Bolivia that this huge gap is preventing girls and women to get into digital markets. So I would like to ask your experience. Thank you, Lisa. Over.
Yes, thank you so much. That's actually a very interesting point. So personally, or like, with EMPACT, we don't really have much expertise on that because STEM is still more like a vocational training per se. And with EMPACT, we try to focus on digital skills that, are kind of cross-cutting STEM, but they're not STEM 100%, right? So, but I do believe that programs like mine that focus on digital livelihoods at large, right, should definitely explore also putting together curricula and training on STEM specifically for women. It's just that I don't really have so much experience so far on how to do that efficiently and where to find interesting and engaging contents that are also available online in COVID times. So if you know of positive experiences and like competent implementing partners that in any part of the world, like let's keep in touch, because I mean the model of EMPACT can be really implemented in a variety of topics. I mean, digital skills can be replaced to, I don't know, engineering or anything else. So the model itself, is suitable for any kind of training. Over.
And indeed, I'm hearing again an invitation to partners. So lots of opportunities to do so. Any partner who can help take it to scale and take it to new environments or situations, very welcome to get in touch with Elisa, and we'll make her email address available. It's also on the screen. Thank you, Maria Jose, for the question. And I think maybe the last question of the day, I would like to go to Philippa, because she has just asked one that is very similar to the one posted by an anonymous attendee. So Philippa, over to you. Philippa is from DESA, based in New York, I believe.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned at the beginning that, sorry, that about people displaced and refugees, and that had to do a lot with food and all that things. And I just wondered if the program included these refugees, the young people that are displaced, and how that is done, and if there is any, impact in local communities, how they see that, how they welcome that, or do they welcome that? How do you do that? How do you manage that? And if you are working with the UN High Commissioner on Refugees. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the great work. I find this amazing. Thank you.
No, thank you. And that's a very, very good question. I actually wanted to talk about it during the presentation, then I skipped it. So we do work with internally displaced people and refugees. I give an example. Turkey, 50% of our participants. So the model is 50% host communities, 50% refugees. Most of the refugees we have at the moment are Syrians, but we are expanding to new areas of Turkey where also refugees come from different places, mostly Africa, the African continent. So we try to do 50-50. Iraq is pretty much the same, 50-50. And the way we do it is, if there are refugee camps, we find an implementing partners in the refugee camp, and then we invite host communities and refugees to the same center, I mean, before COVID, clearly, to the same center. Because what we have noticed is that EMPACT can really be used as a social cohesion tool. So people were, I mean, I don't have so much data on this though, and we didn't really follow up as much as I would have liked, but I'm bootstrapping, I'm alone in this project. So I should definitely have a better look at the results of it. But we have noticed that there are some tensions between host communities and refugee communities, as you can understand. And by involving them on similar initiatives, and then creating working groups together, and then, I mean, the situation somehow was getting better. Like people were kind of like increasing their network, including, you know, people coming from different backgrounds, from different, from different countries. So let's say it was a social cohesion. It can be a social cohesion tool. And it is used by WFP, it is used like this. So also, I mean, as I told you, in Turkey it's 50-50, in Iraq it's 50-50. We might be going, or at least we were exploring going to Uganda, and we would be going in a refugee camp. And close to the refugee camp, there is a very big host community that is struggling with very high unemployment rates. So we are gonna there as well include 50% unemployed participants from Uganda. So I mean, we had a very good experience. Clearly there, you need to put a lot of safety net around the program, right? Like in local knowledge of the local context, and somehow reliable implementing partners that are known by the community and respected by the community is fundamental. So that's why, and I'm gonna finish here, that's why before I talked about the importance of the implementing partner. It's not only their technical skills on digital training. Sometimes we made a mistake, so to say, in identifying specific technical partners without that expertise, but because in some places we needed more community, like reliable community organization that would be able to source people and bring them together in a way that was safe for everyone. So we gave priority to that rather than their topic knowledge that we kind of brought in like through other partners or, you know, online training and so on. So depending on the context, actually the implementing partner is the kind of reliable community somehow organization that is known by both host community and refugees and is respected. Yeah, very complex, but
very complex indeed. Thanks, Elisa. Thank you for the question, Philippa. Super interesting challenge and a very nice way of overcoming it. And Elisa, as you said, creating social cohesion within these communities. So very well done to you and the team. Seeing Sandra Raton here, also a big shout out to Sandra, who did a lot of the groundwork, taking EMPACT to where it is today. Elisa, we have 1 more minute left. I'd just briefly like to ask you, what are the 3 things that you would like us to take away from that? What are your 3 lessons learned, key takeaways? What should we definitely remember walking away from this webinar?
So the first thing is that digital livelihoods is an incredible tool for resilience building. So, you know, that's an option, and there are now models out there. Besides EMPACT, many other models that can be replicated in countries, in a variety of countries. So I think that that's an incredible opportunity for everyone to explore as an opportunities for resilience building. Second is, if you want to implement this kind of programs, you need to find corporate partners. You need to find companies that are then going to offer opportunities to the participants. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And the last one is collaboration and partnerships. I mean, we are in this all together somehow. And I mean, there is no point in working in silos. So like my win is also the win of someone else if we manage, you know, to collaborate and put resources together. After COVID, you know, it actually got much better for programs like ours. So, so yes, it's really the time to mainstream it. Thanks.
Fantastic, Elisa. And just for the record, I did not pay Elisa to emphasize partnerships and collaboration so much. But Elisa, if you ever need another job, I think UNIN might also be a very happy home for you. So with that, I am going to say a big thank you. So much energy, so much passion, so much great work that you're sharing with us. I'm feeling truly amazed and inspired. So really a big thank you to you and the entire team who's got EMPACT to where it is now. and really excited to see how you can take it to the next level in collaboration with other UN entities in other countries. I think we're definitely not at the end of the road for EMPACT yet, so curious to see where it's going. So thank you, Elisa, for joining us. Big thank you for everyone for joining us on this webinar. It will be available in the webinar library very shortly, and we'll also send it around via email. And looking forward to seeing you very soon. You have a good day, Elisa. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.